Welcome to our noon edition of Arirang News. Here are the headlines at this hour. Heavy snow advisories have been issued across the country. Over the night, more than 13 centimeters of snow piled up in the capital, Seoul. Parts of Gangwon-do province have been seeing at least 4 times as much as snow poured down throughout the past 3 days. The Bank of Korea has decided to keep its interest rates unchanged for the 9th consecutive time. This leaves Korea's key interest rate at 3.5%. The number of trainee doctors who have submitted resignations in Korea has increased to 9,275. More than 8,000 have walked out of their posts. Their standoff against the government does not look like it will be tamed anytime soon, with both sides not backing down on where they stand over the med school quota hike. Heavy snow has been causing disruption in Seoul. Nearly 14 centimeters of snow fell in the capital on Wednesday night, disrupting this morning's commute for many. While precipitation has died down in most places, Gangwon-do province is expected to see more snowfall through Friday, with heavy snow alerts still in place. Yoon starts us off.
According to the Korea Meteorological Administration, 13.8 centimeters of snow accumulated in Seoul on Wednesday night. The 8.6 centimeters of snow that fell after midnight was by itself the third highest amount of snow to fall in a single day in February since 2000. Other parts of the metropolitan area also received heavy snowfall, with 9.8 centimeters falling in Incheon and 5.8 centimeters in Suwon. According to officials at Seoul Metro, the overnight snowfall caused delays on Seoul subway lines 2, 5, and 7. Ice formed on railway tracks at a train depot at the eastern end of line number 5 in the Godok neighborhood, which kept trains from leaving the depot on time, leading to delays of about 25 minutes. On lines 2 and 7, signal problems also led to delays of up to 25 minutes. Seoul Metro said it is still working towards fully restoring the tracks and power supply. The precipitation has died down in most places, but Gangwon-do province is expected to see more snowfall on top of the 70 centimeters accumulated since Tuesday. This region is expected to see up to 15 centimeters of snowfall through Friday as heavy snow alerts remain in place. Yoon, Arirang News.
The Bank of Korea has decided to maintain its key interest rate at 3.5%. This is the 9th straight time it has done so, mainly because consumer prices still remain unstable and above the central bank's inflation target of 2%. Our economics correspondent Moon reports.
South Korea's central bank kept its benchmark interest rate steady at 3.5% as widely expected. The decision was announced on Thursday following a monetary policy committee meeting.
Due to supply chain risks posed on global oil prices and continued high consumer costs, slowing inflation will not be easy. We believe that it is necessary to stabilize the inflation rate to the 2% level by maintaining monetary tightening for a sufficient period of time.
This is the 9th consecutive meeting that the BOK has decided to freeze the rate since it was raised to 3.5% in January last year, following 10 consecutive rate hikes in a bid to tackle inflation. Analysts say that there is little reason to rush the lowering of interest rates due to higher than targeted price hikes. In January, on-year growth in consumer prices fell to the 2% range for the first time in 6 months, but at 2.8% it remains above the 2% target. The bank said earlier this month that this figure could tick back up, citing geopolitical uncertainties in the Middle East, which could influence oil prices. Unfavorable weather conditions have also meant that prices for agricultural products such as fresh fruit are continuing to climb. The continued rise in household debt is also a factor cited by experts as being behind the rate freeze. According to recent data, household debt in the final quarter of 2023 increased to its highest level ever, rising by nearly $6 billion on quarter. In January this year, mortgage loans surged by over $3.6 billion compared to the previous month, which is the second largest increase seen since January 2021. It is also unlikely that the BOK will cut interest rates ahead of the United States, with the current key interest rate gap between the two countries at its largest ever at 2 percentage points. Local experts believe that the central bank could ease their monetary policy in the second half of next year, provided the Federal Reserve's pivot policy takes effect in June as currently predicted. Meanwhile, the BOK also maintained its economic growth outlook for this year at 2.1%, as well as the inflation forecast at 2.6% as set last November. Moon, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve may be cutting its policy rates from June. That's according to financial analytics firm S&P Global. S&P on Wednesday has forecast a cut of 25 basis points in June, along with 2 additional rate cuts, totaling 75 basis points by the end of the year. The agency also upped its forecast for real GDP growth in the United States this year from its November forecast of 1.5% to 2.4%. The S&P also said inflation is set to cool in the coming months. We're now into the third day of the massive walkout by doctors here in Korea. 7 out of 10 interns and residents have left their post after handing in resignation letters, and 6 out of 10 medical students have submitted a leave of absence. Yoon brings us the latest.
The nationwide doctors' strike continued for a third day on Thursday, with doctors protesting against the expansion of South Korea's medical school quota by 2,000 to over 5,000 starting in 2025. Over 9,000 trainee doctors, more than 74% of the country's interns and residents, had submitted letters of resignation as of 10 p.m. Wednesday, though none have been accepted. Out of these, over 8,000 have not shown up for work. The total number of leave of absence letters from medical students announced on Thursday surpassed 11,000 nationwide, which is more than 60% of the total number of medical students. About 2/3 of trainee doctors have walked out of hospitals, meaning medical services have been disrupted and patients are being affected. For example, at Samsung Medical Center, one of Seoul's 5 major teaching hospitals, 30% of operations scheduled for Wednesday were postponed. Surgical procedures at the Severance Hospital were less than half of the usual amount. The focus of large hospitals has shifted to prioritize critical and emergency care, causing outpatient appointments to be postponed, while some patients recovering from surgery were discharged earlier than scheduled. The number of complaints reported increased to almost 150, with 44 of those over surgery cancellations.
My father had emergency surgery for colon cancer, so today I came to check on the results, but I received a text message asking for my understanding, saying that appointments might be delayed due to the high number of patients.
In a briefing on Wednesday, the government stated that protecting people's lives was a priority and urged doctors to immediately return to work and to discuss the medical student quota issue with them. To minimize disruptions to medical services, the government plans to extend the opening hours of public health centers and loosen restrictions on access to 12 military hospital emergency rooms. It has also issued return-to-work orders to a majority of the doctors who have walked out. To this, junior doctors are demanding the government backtracks on the plan to increase the number of medical students, while the Korean Medical Association calls its return-to-work orders amount to suppression. Yoon, Arirang News.
As doctors leave their places of work en masse, the government announced today that strict response measures will be taken against what they call an illegal collective action, which could involve arrest. Lee has more.
The South Korean government says that it will take strict measures against what it calls illegal collective action from doctors protesting the medical school enrollment quota increase by leaving their posts. This is according to the Justice and Interior Ministries, as well as the Supreme Prosecutor's Office and the National Police Agency at their joint briefing held to discuss the issue on Wednesday. Saying that collective action that, quote, takes people's lives hostage cannot be justified, they said they will conduct investigations on individuals and organizations participating to hold them legally responsible. All this to prevent public health risks.
The government has issued an order to doctors who have resigned or left the medical field to commence work. If the collective refusal of medical treatment continues, an investigation will be conducted strictly in accordance with relevant regulations such as the Medical Service Act.
Minister Lee said when necessary, arrest warrants will be issued for a prompt investigation. Justice Minister Park Sung-jae also said official indictments will be brought against resident doctors refusing to return to their posts. But if the doctors do return to duty soon, the investigation will be closed. Meanwhile, the Justice Ministry said it will offer legal support for people affected by the protests.
We'll prioritize the protection of victims by providing sufficient legal support to patients and their families affected by illegal collective action taken by doctors.
The ministry vowed to offer pro bono legal consultations and litigation aid utilizing existing legal infrastructure. Lee, Arirang News.
$2.5 billion of nuclear power projects are expected to be created in South Korea, with aggressive state support and regulatory changes to promote the lucrative industry. On Thursday, President Yoon held the 14th round of policy discussions with non-government panels and citizens to discuss ways to promote the nuclear power sector to boost local jobs and livelihoods. Declaring this year the start of a leap forward for the nuclear sector, he pledged $2.5 billion into R&D projects and to provide extra financing worth $750 million. The government also pledged to invest over $3 billion throughout Yoon's term on research and investment and enact a special law to back the industry. It will also produce a mid to long-term plan for 2050 to create a stable ecosystem for the nuclear power industry and make the country carbon neutral. For the first time in 20 years, the government will lift greenbelt zones or land protected from development in the regions outside the capital area to boost the regional economy. This comes as President Yoon Suk-yeol remarked as he visited the industrial city of Ulsan to continue his discussion of policies with citizens. Kim Do-yeon reports.
In Ulsan, the first city that was designated for industrial development, President Yoon Suk-yeol shared his plans to utilize more land for new industries to grow. This came on Wednesday as he hosted a livelihood discussion there, a city that led the nation's growth in shipbuilding, automobile, and petrochemical industries.
기존의 패스트 팔로워에서 이제 퍼스트 무버로 탈바꿈을 새롭게 해야 합니다. 정부는 첨단 산업과 미래 산업을 새로운 성장 엔진으로 삼아 울산과 대한민국이 다시 도약할 기회를 만들 것입니다. 이를 위해 제일 중요한 것이 바로 새로운 산업을 전개할 수 있는 입지 공간을 마련하는 것입니다.
He spoke about lifting greenbelt and agricultural land restrictions to efficiently combine labor, capital, and technology to maximize economic values. Specifically, he said he believes in local government autonomy in terms of lifting restrictions in order to foster competitive industries. To achieve this, he's looking into adjusting the rules when it comes to lifting restrictions, which are the same throughout the country, to be different depending on each region and type of area, as he called such rule a, quote, obstacle. These rules haven't been changed in 20 years. He also added that smart and vertical farming are new industries with a lot of potential, so he will adjust regulations of the agricultural land restrictions for the industry's use of more land. All these reforms and the restrictions of land use, he says, are important to achieving his goal of regional balanced growth.
12개 부처와 지자체의 농지 이용 규제의 종류가 무려 336가지에 달하고 있습니다. 전수조사해서 시대의 변화를 따라가지 못하는 낡은 규제는 신속히 개혁하겠습니다.
At the Wednesday's discussion were 60 citizens, including leaders of big companies in Ulsan and a student from the city's vocational education Meister High School, to share their views on each of the topics. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korean Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol held talks with his Japanese counterpart Yoko Kamikawa on Wednesday on the sidelines of the G20 foreign ministers meeting in Brazil. The meeting between the two envoys marks their first in-person talks since Cho took office last month. During the meeting, the two sides agreed to continue to cooperate on a response to North Korea's pursuit of nuclear and missile development, as well as its provocations. They also agreed to closely cooperate on the North's human rights issues, including the issue of abductees. As Seoul and Tokyo are to mark the 60th anniversary of the normalization of diplomatic relations next year, they agreed to continue maintaining closer communication. The European Union saw a consensus on its 13th package of sanctions related to the Russia-Ukraine war. This time, it's also set to impose its first sanctions on North Korea that's also related to the conflict. An Sung-jin with more.
The European Union is to impose its first sanctions on North Korea in relation to the Ukraine-Russia war. The Belgian government, which currently holds the rotating EU presidency, announced on X, formerly Twitter, that the 27 EU members approved a 13th package of Ukraine-related sanctions against Russia on Wednesday. It added that it will be one of the most extensive sanctions packages approved by the EU. France 24 stated that the North Korean defense minister and a North Korean firm are reportedly to be added to the sanctions list for supporting the Russian military. Those on the list will be banned from traveling to the EU or doing business there. The EU has previously imposed sanctions on high-ranking North Korean officials for human rights violations and violations of UN Security Council resolutions, but this will be the first time regarding the war in Ukraine. North Korea has reportedly supplied munitions to Russia against Ukraine in return for satellite technology.
At least 24 ballistic missiles of allegedly North Korean origin were used during Russia's missile attacks on the territory of Ukraine.
The new listings will add 193 entities and individuals, mostly for helping Moscow procure weapons or for their involvement in kidnapping Ukrainian children. More details will be released after the package is officially approved on February 24th, which is the second anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Including the most recent sanctions, the EU's sanction list over Russian aggression in Ukraine will have more than 2,000 individuals and entities. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
According to a report by the Wall Street Journal, former crypto billionaire Do Kwon is set for U.S. extradition following a Montenegro court ruling. That means he will stand trial on fraud charges there and not in his home country of South Korea. Lee Seung-jae reports.
22 months since first going on the run and 11 months on from his arrest, a Montenegro court ruled that crypto entrepreneur and Terraform's Lab co-founder Do Kwon should be extradited to the United States. According to a report by the Wall Street Journal on Wednesday, the Pokoricha High Court ruled that Kwon is to be extradited to the U.S., where he has been indicted on charges of crimes committed in the field of financial operations. In 2023, Kwon and Terraform were charged by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission over a multi-billion-dollar fraud. The report added that the court rejected South Korea's request for extradition. Kwon's lawyer argued that his client should be extradited to his home country rather than the U.S. However, the court ruled otherwise. The basis for the decision by the court was not revealed. Kwon was arrested at an airport in Montenegro last March after being caught with fake passports. The charges laid against Kwon and Terraform Labs stem from the collapse of the Terra USD, a stablecoin designed to maintain a constant $1 price, and the Luna token, which was closely linked to Terra USD. Both cryptocurrencies lost an estimated $40 billion or more in May 2022 when Terra USD failed to maintain its $1 peg. The SEC said Kwon and his company deceived investors about the stability of Terra USD and that a popular Korean mobile payment app used the Terraform blockchain to settle transactions. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
At least 30 are feared dead after an illegal gold mine in the Venezuelan town of La Paragua collapsed on Tuesday, local time. Search and rescue efforts are still underway as 100 others are still believed to be trapped in the collapsed Buyaloca mine. The open-pit gold mine collapsed when cracks in the ground caused piles of dirt to engulf the surrounding area. The Buyaloca mine, located in the remote region of Bolivar, can only be reached by an hours-long boat ride. The casualty figures reported by the town's mayor are yet to be confirmed by national authorities due to the mine's remoteness.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In the United Kingdom, the country's nuclear deterrent, a Trident missile launched from a submarine, reportedly misfired during a test last month. The Sun newspaper reported on Wednesday that the failed missile crashed into the ocean close to the launch site off the coast of Florida. This is the second time in a row that a test firing of a Trident missile from a Royal Navy submarine has failed. Defense Secretary Grant Shapps, who oversaw HMS Vanguard's launch test, said that on this occasion an anomaly did occur, but there are no implications for the reliability of the wider Trident missile systems and stockpiles. The previous test in 2016 also failed, with the missile veering off course. British tests of Trident missiles are rare, partially due to the cost, as each missile comes with a price tag of around $20 million. A retired satellite burned up in the Earth's atmosphere over the North Pacific Ocean on Wednesday. According to the European Space Agency, its European remote sensing satellite, the ERS-2, completed its atmospheric re-entry at approximately 6:17 p.m. Central European Time. The ESA also said there were no reports of damage to property due to falling debris. The satellite, which has been out of use since 2011, had been gradually declining in altitude until it reached a critical altitude of around 80 kilometers when strong atmospheric drag began breaking it into pieces. Launched in 1995, the 2-ton satellite collected data on land surfaces, ice, sea levels, and warming oceans, as well as monitoring natural disasters. In the U.S., Alabama Supreme Court ruled on Friday that frozen embryos created during in vitro fertilization can be considered children under state law and are entitled to the same legal rights as any other unborn children. Justice J. Mitchell, who oversaw the majority 7-2 ruling, wrote that unborn children are children without exception based on developmental stage, physical location, or any other ancillary characteristics. This means that frozen embryos are now legally considered extrauterine children. The first of its kind decision comes in response to wrongful death lawsuits in 2021, launched against a fertility clinic in the state after a patient broke into an IVF freezer and dropped a number of trays with frozen embryos. American superstar Beyoncé has become the first black woman to top the Billboard's Hot Country charts. The 42-year-old singer-songwriter reached #1 on the US chart on Tuesday with 2 songs from her upcoming album. The song Texas Hold'em took the top spot, while 16 Carriages came in at #9. Texas Hold'em also reached #2 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. While this is not the first time the Texas native pop star has released country tracks, the songs are the best performing in the genre so far. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Hope your morning ride was safe and sound. Seoul received nearly 14 centimeters of snow overnight, causing a messy Thursday morning commute. Precipitation has died down in most places and should let up today, but those in Gangwon-do province need to brace for more snowfall through Friday with up to 30 centimeters in the forecast. The rest of Gangwon-do could see 2 to 15 centimeters with heavy snow alerts remaining in place. Meanwhile, certain parts of the country will receive on and off rain instead of snow through tomorrow under cloudy skies. We had sub-zero temperatures to start the day in the capital, but rising to 4 degrees by the afternoon. Busan will see a high of 7 degrees. And especially those traveling from south to the northern regions today, be prepared for messy roads and stay safe. Meanwhile, Jeju Island will see on and off rain through Sunday. Then Jeollanam-do is forecast to see a winter mix this weekend with more up and down temperatures in most parts of Korea. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That's all we have for you at this hour. We'll bring you more updates tomorrow.